We're live to YouTube. We're live on Shaw. I'd like to begin the meeting by acknowledging with respect that we are in the Robinson Huron Treaty Territory and that the land on which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and known as Bawating. Bawating is home to Garden River First Nation, Batchewana First Nation, and the historic Sault Ste. Marie Métis Council. And I'd like to thank our media and broadcast partners for covering tonight's meeting. With that, Madam Clerk. Yes, we are going to go to, yes, thank you. We're going to go to Councillor Hollingsworth, who had some comments to say about the air show that took place last week.
Thank you. I just want to briefly say thank you to many Siouxites that helped to pull the air show together with the Snowbirds. First, I want to acknowledge, of course, Major Dion Marson, who is our own Siouxite. He's the gentleman that flew the CF-18 fighter jet that most people were very impressed and proud of, including his parents. We as council, we as a community are very proud of him as well. And I just want to say thank you to basically the Snowbirds himself, Captain Phil Rochon, Captain Ed Soy, and Adam Stewart. And of course, the Sault Ste. Marie Airport team, Terry Boss, Emma, Pat, Jim DeGrasso, and Andy. And there's many more people to thank from our emergency services, Lauren Perry, our OPP Marine Unit, Sergeant Mike Reget, a Sault Ste. Marie Fire, a platoon chief, USA Coast Guard Lieutenant Simpson, U.S. Coast Guard Northern Great Lakes Command Duty Officer, Sioux Search and Rescue, of course, Scott Walker. I don't want to miss our own team here that put extra time and hours into it. I want to say thank you to Rick Bourne, our tourism clerk and park, Stephanie Sears, also Alana Kempachik, Virginia McLeod, Josh Ingram, Richard Jones, and of course, Jamie Hilsinger from the Bush Plain Museum and the Legion. The Legion is dear to all of us. Pierre Breckenridge, Major Annette Golder, International Bridge Group, Peter Patain, Carrie Fox of Public Affairs with the U.S. Army Corps, Sioux College, Greg Barsh, and Army Corps Engineers, Carrie Fox. To put on such a spectacular show obviously involves the talent of the Snowbirds, which again, we thank them for coming to our community, but it also involves a lot of hard work by these individuals and others that I may accidentally forgotten. So again, thank you, Snowbirds, and we look forward to seeing you in our community again. And for those that attend Bush Plain Days, we really appreciate your support as well. All the best.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. And Mr. Ver has some news for the community as well.
Let's congratulate Dan Perry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We would like to congratulate Dan Perry, who's just been named our new Director of Public Works. Dan's got a lot of experience working with the City of Sault Ste. Marie in various roles in engineering and public works, and we know he'll do a great job, and congratulate him on this new position.
Madam Clerk, adoption of minutes. I would like to note that there's a recorded conflict for me in the minutes that I didn't declare at the beginning of the last meeting. That's bylaw 2024-125, zoning on 10 Huron Street, 0 Huron Street, and 29 Bay Street as the owner of the property that was rezoned as a client of my firm.
Motion by, is Councillor Kinnock in the meeting? Okay. So a motion by Councillor Caputo and Zagordo resolved that the minutes of regular council meeting of September 9, 2024 and special council meeting of September 18, 2024 be approved.
All in favor?
And under agenda item 4, declaration of pecuniary interest. I haven't received any.
Any declarations, Council? Seeing none.
And I have a motion by Councillors Bruni and Caputo resolved that the agenda for October 1, 2024 City Council meeting and addenda as presented be approved with the exception of the removal of the closed session motion, which is agenda item 14.
Any questions, Council? Seeing none, all in favor? That carries.
And that will take us to the consent agenda. Liam Brecken is in attendance to make a brief delegation to first agenda item 7.1.
Mr. Brecken, welcome to council.
Thank you, elected members of council. Just going to keep track of my time.
We can keep track for you, Mr. Brecken.
Right. Yes, on agenda item 7.1, the corporate strategic plan, I noticed in the report that it says it's recommended to be resolved that the report of the chief administrative officer dated October 1st, 2024 concerning the corporate strategic plan feedback be received and that council approve the plan. I took a look at the plan before the feedback session opened and afterwards and didn't notice too many significant changes. And after reading through the comments, there's a few things I'd like to note before council, before they vote on the motion to approve the plan. And mainly, I saw a number of comments from community members saying that the focus areas, they outlined a number of very important goals, ambitious goals that the corporation of the city of Sault Ste. Marie has been trying to achieve for some time. However, there were lacking in a lot of people's eyes an action plan and some appropriate metrics to determine whether or not we've actually achieved those goals throughout the period that the corporate strategic plan applies to. And I know that the future SSM community development strategy, official plan, housing action plan, parks and recreation master plan, asset management plan, community greenhouse gas reduction plan, community culture plan, et cetera, are all referenced in the document. But I think a lot of community members would like to see some of those key action plan items in the strategic plan itself. I noticed that it is a flashy plan. It grabs the interest of the individual, but I think it's lacking in a bit of substance. And so I'd ask council to consider perhaps further feedback from the community be taken, or at the very least, the plan be taken back and reviewed, and some more of the comments be taken into account. And one thing to note, it talks a lot in the strategic plan about services and delivering municipal services. This corporation of the city of Sault Ste. Marie is a corporation, a service corporation that provides good faith and duty services to the members of the community who pay the rates. And it is incumbent on them to maintain the public trust as money is put into the public trust. Elected members are elected trustees, and it's important to remember your role as public servants as opposed to anything that would resemble a sort of government, because you're providing services to the ratepayers exclusively.
Mr. Brecken.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Council, since we're on 7.1, are there questions on 7.1? Councillor Hollingsworth?
Thank you. Overall, I feel that it is very well done. And I know that we are going to be boiling it down as we move forward. But just a few quick questions. Through you, Mayor, I'm assuming to Mr. Vare.
Yes.
For the viewers at home, can we start on page 8? There was reference that where is it? Entrepreneurs. How do you see the city doing this at a very high level and supporting entrepreneurs?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, our primary way of interacting with entrepreneurs is through the Millwork Center. And so we have a team there that has the training and the skills to help entrepreneurs with their business plans. We have co-working space and office space that can help new entrepreneurs get going. And I think also they've got a lot of expertise on the funding options that are available to new entrepreneurs in order to help them grow their businesses. The other thing I should mention as well is they do run the high school summer company program, which is a great feeder program for youth in the community to get experience running their own businesses in the summertime.
Okay, great. Just one, two other questions. Jumping ahead back, I think it's on page 3, there was mention of eliminate barriers. Again, for the viewers at home, can you quickly, high level, explain what do you mean by barrier, type of barriers that we want to eliminate? Is that with accessibility or so forth?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, really the plan talks about removing barriers across the board in the community. So on different aspects of barriers, certainly we've talked about an accessible community and the opportunity of our accessibility committee and the city to assist in accessible services. The other side of barriers that's been identified in the plan is related to working with businesses in order to facilitate new development. So streamlining processes and removing any barriers that are impediments to growing new businesses, new developments in Sault Ste. Marie.
Okay, great. And I actually had a question down about measuring. Can you briefly tell us how you see measuring our results, our successes?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth. In the report, staff report that's before you tonight, what we wanted to do was have the plan approved tonight by council, and then staff will go away and they will develop an action plan that will include key metrics that will be tracked and the timelines for key projects. And so that will be presented to council at a later date.
Mhm.
So the approval of the plan is the first step, and then we'll come back to council with that more detailed action plan and metrics associated with that.
Okay, excellent. And my final question, under the well-being section, it could be my eyes, but I did not see that there's any specific bullet that addresses community safety. Well done. Glad to see a huge focus on health, such as mental health and also physicians and so forth, but I don't see a specific bullet on community safety. Can you elaborate? Is there a bullet there that I missed, or would you consider just putting a bullet on something around safety?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, within the social equity pillar, we do have a bullet that talks about supporting programs that foster a safe, welcoming, and inclusive community. So that was one aspect of the report that identified safety within this corporate strategic plan.
Okay. I just want to echo that we do focus on safety in the community. We have done a wonderful job on the Downtown Ambassador Program, I believe it's referred to. And I just want to make sure the community know and fully understand that policing and other safety measures are important to us.
Absolutely. And Mr. Mayor, I can also add that the vision statement that was updated in this corporate strategic plan does also say that Sault Ste. Marie is a thriving, safe, and inclusive community where you belong. And I know as the corporate strategic plan was being put together and the feedback from the public, certainly safety was something that came up in a lot of the feedback, and that's something that staff is focused on in working with our community partners. We do have a corporate safety and well-being plan, and that plan we aim to update later this year into next year and have that returned to council.
Okay, that's great. And again, the vision statement is excellent. So thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Other councillors on 7-1, Councillor Vezoellan.
Thank you, through you, Mayor, to Mr. Ver. And it's just a comment. I just want to point out that Focus Area 1, Community Development, which is slide 10, I believe, Truth and Reconciliation is mentioned as its own standing item. And I think that's really important, especially we were part of a historic Wampum Belt ceremony yesterday, and both Garden River First Nation and the City of Sault Ste. Marie signed a friendship accord. And I'm happy to be joining our community economic development folks. Tomorrow, we're having an all-day session at the Dan Pine Lodge. So I think it's time that, you know, we have truth and reconciliation front and center. It is its own pillar in our community development, and I was really happy to see that. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Vesuel, and it was very nice ceremony yesterday for sure.
Yeah.
Other councillors with questions on 7.1? Seeing none, council, we've also got a delegation on 7.3, so we'll go to that next, and we'll welcome Ms. Renowitz to the,
Mr. Brecken is also.
Mr. Brecken also on, okay. We'll do either one. We've got two delegations on this. Welcome to council, Ms. Renowitz.
Thank you very much. It's an absolute honor to be here the day after the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. In particular, because there are these 94 calls to action across Canada. I ran a drop-in center facility for individuals experiencing homelessness, urgent housing issues, and active substance use between 2022 and 2023. We served over 300 individuals who were highly in crisis, in particular in our downtown, and over 90% of our members self-identified as Indigenous. That is a systematic issue that is happening not only in our community, but across Canada. The Heart Hub funding application is something that I and my colleagues highly approve of and are in support of. I do hope that as the planning goes forward for this Heart Hub application, that it's essential that we run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If it is only during business hours, it will not capture a lot of the times that our community is experiencing crime, vagrancy, trespassing, loitering, overdoses, and deaths that we are experiencing in our community right now. In 2010, there were 4 individuals who were reported to be experiencing homelessness in Sault Ste. Marie. In 2021, it was 244. In the last report released by the District of Sault Ste. Marie Social Services Administration Board, between the 2023-24 report, that number was 492. So we've doubled in the last 3 years. It's unacceptable on so many levels that we have individuals who are sleeping on the ground in Sault Ste. Marie, and that we have individuals who have nowhere to use a facility. So the Heart Hub will be really an answer to a lot of our prayers, and the sooner the better. The difficulty, however, is that already 80 plus not-for-profits have expressed an interest in applying for this new funding. There are 400 municipalities across Ontario who will be competing, and depending on the number of applications that are actually submitted, at best guess, our chance of getting one of these Heart Hubs runs between 12 and 24%. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the lottery, and I'm not a huge fan of putting all of my eggs in one basket. As a community, we can make a difference for this issue moving forward if our faith groups, our businesses, our leaders, and everyone comes together to make a decision not to argue on either side of the debate around homelessness or substance use, but to make a decision that we are going to be solution focused.
Ms. Renowitz, your time is running rather thin.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Brecken?
Thank you again, elected members of. Thank you again, elected members of council. I do note that in the report on the strategic plan that it does mention homelessness, addiction, recovery treatment hubs. I just had a few comments on this, and I do support the council providing assistance to CMHA or like a letter of endorsement to assist their application, because it is it's affecting all communities in a lot of different places around the world, and including in Sault Ste. Marie particularly. One thing I noticed also in the report on the strategic plan is that it talks about long-term financial plan and staff priorities. I just also note that elected members of council do represent the men and women who pay the rates and are supposed to be making the key decisions at the corporation of the city of Sault Ste. Marie, and not as much city staff. I know it's very difficult to keep on top of the amount of information that you have before you, including the Ontario Municipals Councillor Guide and the Municipal Act, et cetera. And I just note that it's an important opportunity. The funding parameters exist with the Ontario Service Corporation, of course. In this case, the money that they're allocating to the HART program. But as Julie said, I don't think it's in our best interest in putting all eggs in one basket. I think this is probably a better opportunity than establishing a safe injection site. But most of all, people need to be connected in their community. And I think it's important that elected members of council continue to support open engagement with men and women in the community, especially on issues like this. And I had the privilege of attending a town hall on Thursday last week, and I thought it was a very productive exercise. And I would like to see more of these initiatives undertaken in the future to ensure that everyone feels.
On the HART Hub application, Mr. Brecken.
Yes, and it's related to the specific. Well, it is an important opportunity for you guys to support, and I know that we need to come together as a community on this issue, above all, very compassionately, and put aside a lot of our differences, and assist these people. And I thank you very much. Peace be with you all.
Thank you. Just, I've got some comments. So with respect to the HART Hub application, first off, it will be very competitive. We know that there are going to be lots of applicants applying to it. We have a task force with, just a quick glance here, it looks about 15 community organizations that are supporting the application that is being submitted. About a month ago, a number of us attended the Association of Municipalities of Ontario conference, and we met with the Minister of Health the day that the HART Hub funding was announced, the same day that the application, or that the process to apply for a supervised consumption site was essentially closed down by the province. And so this is what's available to us. A HART Hub, like it or don't like it, is what's available to us. It is what's available for the crisis that our community is facing in terms of mental health and addiction services. It's the only thing really that the government has put on the table in terms of new funding to address this crisis. And so we have to apply to it to be the responsible community leaders that we are. To not apply for it would assure that we wouldn't get it, but we are applying it for it, I should say, in the way that was recommended to us by the Minister of Health herself. So she said that she did not want to see multiple applications from the city of Sault Ste. Marie. She wanted to see one application supported by all the community organizations that play a role in addiction and mental health services. So whereas you might have seen the hospital put in their own in some other scenario, or you might have seen the city put in their own in conjunction with DSAB and CMHA, now you've got everybody essentially at the direction of the health minister saying, apply as a single group, and that will make our application stronger. So that's what we are doing. That's why we've got everybody pulling in the same direction on this file. And we are hopeful that given that we are heeding the minister's advice, that she will see the obvious need in our community, especially since the stats are going in the wrong direction in terms of opioid deaths, overdoses, and toxicity of opioid supply in our community. So that is some context for this report that I think is not in here, but is important to for the community to have. So I had Councillor Caputo on 7.3 and then Councillor Dufour.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few comments about the heart hubs and some of the words that I heard tonight. Thank you for your concern and for coming to speak to us this evening. We heard that in 2010, there were 4 homeless people, and in 2023, the official count is at 492. I think we can all agree that it's probably much higher than that, but that is what's captured. So there is this need to do something, and something I continue to hear from the community is, what are we going to do? Nobody's doing anything. And I want to highlight that I think that to go from 2010, us having only 4 homeless people in this community, to today, where we have expanded and moved Pauline's Place, the men's shelter at Sacred Heart and the CRC have been built, the community wellness bus, the RAM clinic and day treatment plan, the downtown ambassador program, Northway Wellness has been built. I think that folks are trying to work together in the best ways that they can for this community. We are trying. I think this is just an absolute beast of a problem. And I think anybody who knows anything about homelessness, addiction, and mental health understands that. And I welcome everyone to come forth and try and solve this issue. I do think, though, within the community, it's important to support the work that has been done and the work that is continuing to be done. And so, I appreciate the application for the Heart Hub. I'll be honest, these scare me a bit. Not being able to have access to a safe consumption site, which is what has been proven to work, is difficult. It's difficult reading the report, which says this may have primary health, mental health, all the things. And I appreciate that's the only information we've been given. So this is a very vague thing that's been put forward by the province again. But I support the application wholeheartedly. And if there's anything that I can do to further it along, I would definitely support that. I'm hoping that we can help the folks in this community in the best way possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Caputo. Councillor Dufour.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And thank you to CEO Ver for helping to lead the charge in forming this task force here at the City of Sault Ste. Marie. I think everyone around this table understands and agrees that the need in our community is great. And I think it's worth pointing out that all of these things that Heart Hubs are able to pay for, these are all things that our community has been lacking for years. These are things that we have been asking for year over year for as long as I've been on City Council. And this is the first time a new funding envelope has opened up at the provincial level for us to apply for those things that our community desperately needs. And that's over and during a time where the City of Sault Ste. Marie, via the Social Services Board, did commit a significant amount of its own money to help address this problem. So I do think that's important context for the Heart Hubs. And I also, I want to mention some of your other words, Mr. Mayor, that because I was in the room when we met with the Minister of Health, and one of the things that you said to her, which I wholeheartedly agree with and admire, was that if Heart Hubs are going to be the solution to the problem, then Sault Ste. Marie needs that solution more than any other community in Ontario. And that, to me, is what our stats say. That is what our community is saying. That is what the reality is on the ground. Sault Ste. Marie needs this more than any other community in Ontario. And I was very proud to see you share that directly with the minister. Now seeing all of the community providers coming together for one application. I do believe that Sault Ste. Marie has as good of a hand as we ever could have in making this application. And so I do hope that community providers, community members, people listening at home, that everybody will continue to gather around and to support the work that's being done and the work that we hope to do under this model. So happy to support it here with my vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dufour. Councillor Hollingsworth?
Thank you. First of all, I do support this as well. And I think that my two previous colleagues did a great job summarizing what we as a community have done to help those. And behind the scenes right now, I know DSAB is still working very hard on other solutions. But I do have a few questions just for clarification, please. Through you, Mayor, to Mr. Ver. The questions that I received through email was basically, can you tell us what is the difference between the Heart Hub, which outlines in the report that will be offering primary care, mental health services, addiction care and support, shelter, transition beds, Nuxalon, and so forth. So what are the three main differences between the Heart Hub and our current Sacred Heart Community Resource Center?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, I would say a number of the services that are described and eligible for Heart Hubs are being conducted now within the Community Resource Center. The difference, I think, is, excuse me, to one of the comments earlier, is that the funding will enable us to expand those services. So provide more 24-hour services and wraparound support, as well provide more frontline care that's required in the community. So it's really bolstering the services that are there, making them available 24/7, as well as providing new funding for shelter and transition beds, which is an important part of the Heart Hub funding model. 1.3 million of the 6 million has to go towards those shelter and transition beds. So that will help again to bolster the services that are in place now and provide more care for the residents in Sault Ste. Marie.
Okay. For the viewers at home, can you explain what a transition bed is?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth. I don't know if I'm the best person to describe that. My understanding, the transition beds really are a place that enables someone to have a bed, a place to land until such time as they're found other accommodations. So it's really a temporary bed that will enable them to move on and access other services.
Okay. I like how you were saying that basically it's going to hopefully allow us to expand on the services we already provide. So I think that's a positive. I think that the Minister of Health will have seen and know that we have this particular model already in place that's working. And she may give us some more, how can I say, help in quotations. My other question, in my heart, as a nurse, I deal with those that are on drugs. In my heart, I strongly believe that we do not support children enough, children of parents that are on drugs. In this report, and maybe your conversations with the Minister of Health, will this Heart Hub somehow help the children? I strongly feel that a lot of the funding, a lot of support over the years have gone towards adults. But I still strongly feel that we need to put more investment into the children. Can you comment on that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, what I can say is Algoma Family Services is at the table with the stakeholder group. And certainly they are looking at, the continuum of care that's available in the community right now, what the gaps are and how we can assist. So certainly we can take that feedback back to the group to discuss, but I know it's something that is on the table now in looking at how we have a continuum of services in Sault Ste. Marie.
Okay. And I did see Algoma Family Services on the list as partners and stakeholders. Well, I failed to see, and I could be my eyes, nothing from the school board. Was the school boards reached out to, and is it too late to include them as a partner since they see children every day? And our school boards are doing a good job in helping children, and there's programs that we may be able to capture. Is there a possibility to include them as a stakeholder?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, they haven't been part of the initial discussion groups, but certainly we can reach out to them. I think the most pressing thing right now is obviously the timeline is October 18th to get the application in. It's a tight window.
Mhm.
But the group does want to hear from everyone. They want to make sure we're implementing what is required in Sault Ste. Marie, and I know they're open to any ideas and solutions. So we can reach out to them to see if they have any comments or thoughts on this. The other thing I would add to your earlier point is there are no capital dollars associated with this funding call. So having the Community Resource Center in place, I think, is a blessing and a positive for our community because we have a facility now that can be used to be augmented with this Heart Hub funding.
Okay. I would ask you strongly, I know you're very busy, but tomorrow, if you can pick up the telephone, call the school boards. As we all know through research, breaking the chain starts by ensuring that the children are properly taken care of. The only way to break the chain in drug addiction is to make sure that we do have the right programs. I would strongly encourage in the application that we include some type of comment, some type of idea how we're going to help our kids. And I really think that's going to make us stand out higher than the other applications if we talk about breaking that chain, if we talk about how we're going to help the children. And having said that, can you comment on if we are, not if, when we are successful in this, does this mean that the Community Resource Center will be closed? That was a question I received from a constituent.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, no, the Community Resource Center wouldn't be closed if this funding is received.
Okay. So in conclusion, I will just harp on it. Please think of our children and please consider putting some mention of this in the application. I do think that that will make us even more successful in getting this Heart Hub. Think of our kids, break that chain now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Gardy.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Much of what I was going to say was said much more eloquently than I would have said by Councillor Dufour. So thanks for that, Councillor Dufour. You know, we have a list here of 15 or 16 community agencies or partners who are supportive and will collaborate on this. I don't think anything. Actually, let me phrase this differently. What I think we should do is, this is like everyone in the community knows how we've been suffering for so long. And I think that the community itself should get behind it, and not just through these collaborating agencies, but I put a plea out there to anyone who is listening to write to the Minister of Health, to write to our local member of provincial parliament, to express the need. Objectively speaking, every metric indicates that we should get one of these hubs, as you mentioned. I don't see how we do not. And a better way to ensure that is for every member who is willing to send an email or write a letter to any of the ministries involved and the cabinet minister responsible, along with our local MPP, I think would go a long way. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Gardy. Excellent suggestion. Councillor Vizualan.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. And just a couple of comments based on the last DSAB meeting on September 19th. We had our report, and we're working on a 10-year homelessness and housing plan, which we still don't have the parameters yet, which will be 2025 going forward 10 years. So working on that, and just want to, in terms of Julie's comments, in terms of people that are homeless, we do have a portable housing benefit through DSAB to help ease the stress on the centralized wait list. And we also in 2023 introduced the youth portable housing benefit. The issue with that is youth could not find landlords willing to rent to them. So there's two sides, I think, of our homelessness issue is landlords need to be willing to take faith in renting to young folks and to folks that maybe are vulnerable. So that's another issue. And also in terms of the application, I was at the delegation as well, and it was quite well received, but I do echo Councillor Gardy's comments that, you know, sending emails off concerned citizens, I think is really powerful and important. Only 10 hubs will be funded. And the lead agency had to be a not-for-profit health service provider. So the city could not lead, district social services couldn't lead, school boards couldn't lead. So I really want to take time to really thank Annette Kajimaki and her team at the Canadian Mental Health Association. These applications are very onerous and take a lot of work and a lot of staff time and hours. So I think if we all, you know, do what we can in terms of advocacy, put it into action and send those letters, because of all the municipalities and communities across Ontario, only 10 will be funded. So that's all I have to say. And thanks so much for the delegation and for the folks that are putting in the heavy lifting on this application.
Thank you, Councillor Vezuela. And other councillors on 7.3? Seeing none. Madam Clerk, that brings us to the balance of the consent agenda.
That is correct. And we have accepted agenda item 7.11, the traffic signal removal study, from consent.
Thank you. Council, any matters on consent? Councillor Hollingsworth?
Thank you. I'm just looking up the number quickly. It's to do a Public Works Building Division Annual Fee Report 2023.
7.8.
Thank you. 7.8. Through you, Mayor, to, should I go to Mr. Perry? Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry.
Romeo.
Thank you, Romeo. Just out of curiosity, has the province announced any new fees a municipality can charge for or can't charge for? Any updates, anything that we should be aware of that's coming down the pipeline?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, nothing that jumps to the top of my mind. No.
No? Okay. Could you please email me, out of curiosity, the permit fees from 2020 up to 2023? I'm just curious to see if we're increasing or decreasing, what the trend is. And that's all. Thank you.
Mr. Romeo, do you know, I assume we are probably increasing the permit fees annually?
That is correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Which is great. Thank you.
Anyone else on 7.8? Any other matters on consent? Councillor Hollingsworth?
Oh, yes. Again, had troubles with eScribe earlier, so I just have the titles. The Regional Training Center Memorandum of Understanding 2024.
7.14.
Thank you. 7.14. And that's through you, Mayor, to our fire chief, Peter. First of all, I just want to talk in a positive. This is absolutely wonderful. I really strongly hope that this will continue. It not only helps our own community, but I feel strongly it helps our surrounding smaller communities. And so this brings me to my first question. For the smaller communities that have volunteer firefighters, how does this regional center help our smaller communities that feed into our hub? So when I say feed in, I mean the volunteer fire departments that need extra training. How does it help the smaller communities?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth. Basically, it gives them the opportunity to come to our training center, which is a lot closer to any other training center. The closest one is North Bay, and there's one in Thunder Bay. So it allows them access to the curriculum that's offered through the province, as opposed to having to travel a further distance, which probably, I would assume, saves their operating budget as well.
Okay, great. And correct me if I'm wrong, has the province started to crack down more on the volunteer firefighters to say that they have to have so many extra hours of training?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth. They basically, in 2026, there'll be mandatory certifications that come into play through the legislation. So this this is a positive for them to be able to attain the mandatory certifications that they're going to be required to have within 2 years.
Okay. So again, this is another positive that we're helping the surrounding communities to ensure that their volunteers are up to date on the latest technique on fighting fires. And so this is a memorandum. So can I assume that this is definitely going to be our regional center for the number of years?
Yes, we'd like to keep it as long as we can.
Okay. Thank you. That's all.
Anyone else on 714? Seeing none, Councillor Hollingsworth, other items on consent?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Bruni, item on consent or items on consent?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Agenda item 7.5, tenders for line painting services.
Yes.
And I believe this goes to Ms. Hamilton Beach. Regarding the successful applicant here, McGinnis Coating Limited, it says 5 working days. Would you be able to explain what the 5 working days consist of? Like, is it just strictly line painting?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, yes, you are correct. It would be both the white and yellow lines throughout the community.
So then I'm looking at the other tenders that came in. It ranges between 14 working days to 45 working days. And this one company is 5 working days. Do you think that's reasonable? In 5 days, they would have all the line painting done in our city?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, it's been our recent history that it has been accomplished within 2 to 3 days. And there was one bidder that did advise that they would have their work done in 2 days, the one to the left.
Yes.
So yes, we do believe if enough equipment comes in, it will be targeted and it will be accomplished in that time frame.
Yeah, that is substantial extra cost in the 2 days, $790 to $365. But now, would there be a penalty if they don't complete this in a timely fashion? Several years ago, our line painting wasn't completed until late July, early August, if I'm not mistaken.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, this work is largely dependent on both weather and temperature, both rain and all of the gamut. So a penalty as far as dollar value, I don't believe is worked into the contract. I could confirm that, but certainly the time frame, we are holding them to that length of time. It's very difficult if there is good reason for their delay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bruni. Anyone else on 7.5? Seeing none, Councillor Bruni, other items on consent?
No, that's fine.
Councillor Vezoalen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 7.10, the graffiti committee. I just wanted to thank Susan and Brent and Madison for coming together and getting everything organized, and looking forward to having this work under the Cultural Vitality Committee. Thank you, Virginia. And we did a lot of really great things back in 2010, 2009 with the Community Committee on Graffiti, and did a lot of, that's what really brought forth what we see now in terms of mural art. I think this will really help to at least educate on the difference between street art and tagging. And unfortunately, Soya was just tagged on Gore Street. And there are some folks that are coming together to help repaint the building that they have right now. So I just want to really thank staff and excited to get this underway.
Thank you, Councillor Vezoalen. Anyone else on 7.10? Councillor Vezoalen, other items on consent?
That's it, Mayor.
None? Anyone else with items on consent? Okay, seeing none, Madam Clerk.
I have a motion by Councillors Kinnick and Zagordo, resolve that the report, sorry, flipped too fast. Resolved that all items listed under date October 1, 2024, agenda item 7, consent agenda, save and accept agenda item 7.11 be approved as recommended.
All in favor? Carries. Brings us to 7:11. And the amended.
So I will read the amended motion first. It's a motion by Councillors Espina and Zagordo. Resolved that the report of the Municipal Services and Design Engineer dated October 1, 2024 concerning traffic signal removal study be received and that staff be directed to proceed with the removal of signals at Albert Street and Dennis Street and the intersection of Queen Street and Church Street and the reinstatement of the traffic signals at the intersection of Albert Street and Elgin Street. Further, that staff be directed to recommend pedestrian crossing improvements for area residents.
Spina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the things I was shocked with when I read this report was that it wasn't recommended that the lights on Albert Street all stay. That's kind of what I anticipated seeing in this report. And I did anticipate seeing that the lights on Church Street would not be required, only because really and truly there's very limited directional travel of vehicles in that area because the intersecting street only travels in a northern direction, and anything that is to the south, so if you had east-west traffic attempting to travel south, there's only, I think, 2 actual residences there. So the traffic flow, just in my opinion, isn't there. Now, I travel that street regularly, daily, multiple times a day, and I can tell you that the flow of traffic has been improved with the elimination of that stop, because there is another stop literally just 100 or so meters or less to the east of that location. Now, I do understand that there is a potential difficulty for pedestrian crosswalks in that area, especially with increased traffic. I had a great conversation with Councillor Caputo about it, increased foot traffic attempting to get down to the waterfront because the hub trail is there. That's why I think it would be important to explore options for pedestrian crosswalks to allow pedestrians to safely cross in that area. So I think this is something we can look at to improve the flow of traffic, and I think we can safely implement other actions that can help increase the safety of all pedestrians in the area as well.
Thank you, Councillor Spina. We've got Councillor Dufour that wants to question or comment on this.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So I have a question through you to Mr. Rumiel. Mr. Rumiel, specifically concerning the Queen Church intersection, you indicated that were the lights to remain, as was your original recommendation, that they would be set to green. Can you explain what that means and what that would entail for the intersection?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Dufour. So essentially we would rest the lights on green on Queen Street, and they would be activated when a vehicle was present on the south leg. So with the addition of a camera, activate the light only if there's a vehicle waiting on the south leg to turn onto Queen, or if a pedestrian activated it with the button.
Okay, and the difference between that and a potential one day in the future pedestrian crosswalk would be substantial, not much of a difference, or basically it sounds like the only thing that would change if we didn't take your recommendation is that we wouldn't have traffic traveling northbound on Church as much?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dufour, to speaking to the, you're speaking to with respect to a pedestrian crossover, like a PXO instead of?
I guess what I'm wondering is, it seems to me that it would be much, much simpler to just go with your original recommendation, having the lights set to green so that we get all of the traffic flow benefits of having no stoplight there with all of the added pedestrian protections of a PXO.
Through Mr. Mayor, I think I misunderstand the question. Are you asking me if it would be better to put the PXO and remove the signals? Or?
Oh, I'm asking for your professional opinion on that. Yes.
In our recommendation is to leave the signals, to return them to to activate them again. Our experience with PXOs in the city is that through the education of all the PXOs, it has been a challenge. And this is a 4-lane road. We'd be asking on the Queen Street crossing. It would just be safer if the push button was activated and pedestrians had the access of a green or red light. That is consistent with the bulk of the pedestrian and accessibility comments that we had gathered through the study, and that's the recommendation that we landed on.
Just one final question, Mr. Remio. When staff conducted traffic counts at this intersection, I would assume they only counted pedestrians crossing at Queen and Church, not pedestrians crossing at, say, Simpson and Queen or Upton and Queen?
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dufour, it's just at the intersection that we studied.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Vermeil. For my part, Mr. Mayor, I think that it is important to recognize the value in having that traffic break for other pedestrians who I know cross at other areas of the street there. And I think that as we've gone through, sorry, can I give my comments now?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. As we've gone through this traffic study, I've received several emails, phone calls, concerns, not just from residents of the immediate area of Queen and Church, but residents all the way down of especially the slums area, Simpson, Leo, Upton, McGregor. People, and it was generally in two groups. It was older folks, and it was the parents of young children, who were really concerned with how difficult traffic crossings can be at peak times. And all of them shared basically that the big attraction to cross Queen is to access our waterfront, to access the hub trail, to use that as a really convenient and pleasant way to get downtown. And I think that, given some of the upcoming development that we have happening there now and hopefully in the not so distant future, I think it's really important that we do everything we can as a council to maintain that safe access for those folks to continue to come downtown and come down to the waterfront. And I think staff have presented us with a very reasonable compromise in the recommendation to set those lights to green to get probably 99% of the traffic flow benefits that would come from removing the signals. And so I think it makes the most sense to keep the signals there and to proceed with staff's recommendation. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Dufour. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Rumiel, forgive me, I don't seem to remember this. What was the duration of the study?
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Scott, it was approximately 3 months.
3 months. Okay. So I know this isn't how it works, but if you were to extrapolate some of the incident counts that we had during the study versus the previous 36 months, they're all significantly higher. I know that's not how that works, but if you were to make that same assumption that we were going to have, 1, 2, and 7 for every 3 months without the lights, that's quite telling that it's a large increase, right? So I'm thinking similar to what Councillor Dufour just said as well. The staff's recommendation is probably the correct way. I think we're going to get the best of both worlds. We'll talk later on this as well, but I think that pedestrian safety is something that we need to take seriously as a council, and we need to look at doing more of these studies before removing traffic lights. But yeah, that was everything I needed to know, was just so it was a 3-month duration. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Vezo-Allen.
I just have comments, Mr. Mayor. Is that okay? In terms of the Accessibility Committee, which I've sat on since 2018, the Accessibility Committee does not recommend the removal of any signal lights. I do respect the report from staff, and the Church Queen intersection definitely presents a unique difficulty for people with vision loss. There is a bit of a bend as they're coming around, and a crosswalk, an audible crosswalk, really does not help people with vision loss, especially in terms of vehicles not stopping and not being able to hear electric vehicles. I don't use the crosswalk at Churchill Boulevard in Queen because people never stop. I always, if I'm going to cross, I cross at Pine Street, and I've almost gotten hit probably about 5 or 6 times and usually get like honked at and yelled at. So I know we've tried really to educate, and I know that we've put out, public notices about the crosswalk, but I think in our community, there's just for some reason, people are having a hard time with it. I've also received complaints and concerns similar to Council Dufour, but also with the speed on Queen, because they're just going right down Church, and then there really isn't a light till Pine. So from that Church Street to Pine Street, there has been definitely increased speed, and we do have numerous families on bikes, walking, of all ages, using to get to the hub trail. So I will support staff's recommendation, but I will not support this amended motion. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vezoyan. Councillor Hollingsworth?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, through you, Mayor, to Mr. Romeo. Can you elaborate on when you say we are asking for recommended pedestrian crossing improvements? We heard tonight that some of us are concerned of the current crosswalks that are being used throughout the city. Many of us, all of us, most of us have traveled to Toronto, where they have used more advanced crosswalks and more advanced pedestrian improvements. Can you comment on some potential pedestrian improvements that you're thinking of?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, I think the amended motion is suggesting that we would do an improved cross, like a pedestrian crossover or something like that. The recommendation was not, it was to reinstate the signals.
Okay. I don't know if anyone can answer this, but if this is approved tonight, when will this take effect? Like immediately that the lights will be taken out, or will there be basically a time period of adjustment?
I suspect it would be when staff can get to it, probably in the next short while.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, yes, correct. I believe the camera is set for purchase in this budget, which will be installed at Church and Queen, but the other recommendations will be applied this week.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Other councillors on Councillor Caputo on 711.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Rumil. Carl, regarding the traffic light at Albert and Dennis, has there been an increase in accidents since we have bagged that light?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Caputo. There were 2 collisions during the study period at that intersection, and 6 in the previous 36 months. So that would say that was that is a little bit of an increase. We do expect that when you make a change or add, there's going to be a learning curve period. Certainly not to the extent that the Elgin Street intersection was.
Okay, so in the removal of a traffic light, what are we gaining by removing any traffic light? Like just let's say Albert and Dennis, but like, what is the city gaining by removing a traffic light?
Through Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Caputo, like as the original motion was addressed, we're increasing traffic flow on the major street, improving traffic flow on the major street, reducing delay on the during off-peak hours where traffic signals may be cycling through. In the case of the Albert Street intersections, the pedestrian and accessibility issues are a little bit less because you're only looking at the direction of traffic flow in one direction and it's only 2 lanes.
Okay, so just a comment if I can. It was said, I think it was Councillor Spina that said the flow of traffic needs to be improved. But if I start from my parents' house in the West End and I go all the way east in this city and I follow the speed limit and I catch a bunch of reds on the way, I'm still across town in less than 20 minutes. So I don't understand this need to allow vehicles to be rushing again. And I know when this original motion came, I was in favor of doing these studies, but since my term as a counselor has evolved and I'm listening to the complaints of constituents, so many of them are around speeding and improper driving and dangerous crossing. And so I think as a council, we need to decide whether or not we want to do road diets and slow things down, or do we want to remove traffic lights and make cars go through more quickly? And for me, at this time, I can't support the removal of lights. I just think that I don't see the benefit. And I'm not sure about anybody else, but I would have a really hard time if we removed lights to make the flow of traffic go quicker and somebody was hit by a car. And so without a benefit, I just see this as risk. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Caputo. Other councillors, questions, comments? Well, I'm a supporter of removing the traffic signals, not just the ones that are recommended here, but any that aren't warranted. And I think that we add them every time they're warranted, and so we should remove them when they become unwarranted. And I have, over the term that I've been on council, seen traffic signals that have been removed at Huron and Cathcart, Huron and Wellington, Albert and Gore, Albert and Andrews, Simpson and Wellington, Algoma and Bruce, and John and Bloor. So while Councillor Caputo has said that, you know, it doesn't improve traffic flow that much, I mean that, and I'm probably missing some right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 additional traffic intersections, signalized intersections in the community that weren't warranted. And when they're not warranted, they should be removed. And when they are warranted, they should be added, just as we have at Pino's, which people complain about, by the way, the Pino's North, that is, at Home Depot and Sioux Mill, which people complain about. When we are over signalized, we've got the opposite problem that we've got now. So yes, removing traffic signals is a hard thing to do because the people in the immediate area are affected by it. But we see that over the long term, when a signal isn't warranted, it is better not to have it. And so I support removing, I would have supported removing all 3. I think that there are circumstances in which you have to look at the evidence and determine if it is the right thing to do. And I think there is good evidence that not removing the Elgin Street one, given the significant increase, is the right thing to do in this case. But if there are environmental designs that change the street orientation in the future, capital projects in which the signal could be removed responsibly, where it will, you expect, as Mr. Rumiel said, an increase in accidents over the first short while, and then it levels off, just as it has at all of those intersections that I just named. So support Mr. Councillor Spina and Councillor Zagorda's motion and hope that it will pass. With that, Madam Clerk.
I'm going to open for voting the amended motion. That is to remove signals at Albert and Dennis and Queen and Church and reinstate Albert and Elgin.
All in favor? I don't have a count on that. Opposed? 5, 7, 5, it looks like. To me? Or is that math off? What do you have?
Councillor Dufour, you're in the negative?
Against?
And Councillor Caputo?
Against.
And Councillor Kinnick.
Was 4.
So that passes 6-5. Okay. So I've got in the affirmative Councillors Shoemaker, Hollingsworth, Spina, Zagordo, Bruni, and Kinnick. And opposed, Dufour, Vezowalan, Caputo, Gardy, and Scott.
Thank you, Council. That brings us to 8.1.1.
So that is with respect to the former Sioux Area Hospital site. There is a report from the Chief Administrative Officer on the agenda, following which there are 3 related bylaws. Correspondence has been received, which is attached on the addendum.
Okay, council. I'm going to do my comments at the outset, as I think this is a matter that requires a little bit of clarification before I have my comments. I'm going to ask a few questions. Hopefully that'll help me formulate my comments coherently, and then we'll take questions from council. So before my comments, Mr. Ver, who is it anticipated that will pay the cost of the demolition of this building, of the general hospital specifically?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to you, Mr. Mayor, sorry. It's anticipated through the RFP process that we would receive a bid that would have the private sector demolish the building, and potentially would be a reduced demolition fee in exchange for a parcel of the land.
So the proposal that's before us, to clarify, is not that we purchase the property at 4.75 million, then pay an additional 4.5 million to tear it down.
To you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ver or Ms. Shell, there's been some suggestion that we simply should take this property for back taxes. Can you tell me if the property is in a position to take for back taxes at the moment?
Mr. Mayor, no, the property only has the current year outstanding. As you know, tax sale process is governed by regulation, and there must be 3 years in arrears in 2024, and that'll change to 2 years in arrears in 2025. So at this point, we cannot register the property for tax sale.
Let's assume we got to the end of the process. Now, this is a bit of a game that certain property owners play, where they hold off on paying their taxes till right at the last minute. But let's assume we got to the end of the process where we could actually take this property for unpaid taxes. What year would that be?
With the change going to a 2 years arrears in 2025, we would be eligible to register the property in 2026. And then there's a 1-year redemption period. So it wouldn't actually go to tax sale until 2027. And that, as you said, is assuming that the taxes are not paid.
Thank you. And you said the current year taxes are outstanding at present, or haven't been paid and as required before the end of the year. Will that amount come off the purchase price, Madam City Solicitor, at the time of closing? City Solicitor, there we go.
To you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, they'll come off they'll prorate them and it'll come from the proceeds sale.
So we will get the current year's taxes paid in full, or paid up to the date of closing, plus any penalties.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And either to Mr. Ver or Ms. Fields, are there any fines outstanding on the property that would allow us to take the property?
To Mr. Mayor, no, there's no current fines.
Thank you. And are there any orders outstanding on the property?
I don't believe that there are. We wouldn't necessarily know all orders. We only know when the order is not complied with, and then it comes possibly to legal for charges. But this has not been a situation where the orders are not complied with when they're written usually.
Right. They have generally complied with the orders that are given to them.
That's correct.
Even though the building looks derelict.
That's correct. And where they have taken, in our mind, too much time to do the correction, the city has made the corrections and then put the costs onto their taxes, and then they've paid their taxes.
Gotcha. And what about expropriation? What would be the benefit or risk of proceeding down that path with this property?
To you, Mr. Mayor, the risk is we may be right where we are today anyway. The litigation, people seem to think that expropriation is just that we go and take someone's property, but we have to actually go through a litigation process, a mediation process. We have to come up with a fair price for them. And then if there are mortgages on the property, we may be in litigation for a long time dealing with the mortgages. And, or will it end up taking the property with the mortgages on them, which could end up being more expensive than we're going to be dealing with?
So would it be fair to say that the method that we've approached the purchase of this property and as recommended, the negotiation of the purchase price is the only way to assure us what the value is that we're going to pay for it?
I would say yes, because even if we thought we knew what the price was today, if we're litigating for 5 years, it'll be a different price.
Right. Because of the increase in value of property over the course of that period.
Yes.
Thank you. And that doesn't factor in the additional cost that would be spent to actually litigate it.
That's correct. It'd be costs on both sides. We'd probably, at the end of the day, have to pay for our own costs and then the cost of the person that we're taking the property from.
Thank you. Mr. Fair, what is the expected net cost of the purchase after we recover any amounts that we expect to recover? And what is the return on investment timeframe for these properties?
Yes, to you, Mr. Mayor, we anticipate.
You're working. Yeah.
Okay. To you, Mr. Mayor, we anticipate that the proceeds of the sale would be approximately 2.3 to 2.5 million through the RFP process. So that would leave us with an investment of about $2.25 million. Depending on the scale of development and the number of affordable units, given our tax increment equivalent grant, that varies on the timeline. But what we do anticipate, given what we've seen in other projects, is you'd probably be looking at the maximum of 30% affordable units. That would see a payback or the investment paid off within 10 years under that scenario. There is a potential too that we could see a quicker payback in 6 years' time if it was a high density build that didn't have affordable units that extended the TEG period.
Thank you. And the TEG is the phasing in of taxes that this future development would benefit from.
Correct.
Thank you. Well, I've commented a lot on this already through the media and through my social media, but I think that we are at a point where every year we don't do something about this property is a year that we are leaving significant money on the table in terms of potential tax revenue, and a year that our community is not benefiting from the redevelopment of a beautiful and pristine piece of our waterfront. We think, or at least I think, I should say, that for 4.75 million, we can sell the Reno building and the vacant property, recover 2 to 2.5 million, and then within, I think, 6 to 8 years, we will have our return on investment paid off. And every year thereafter, we will be able to put the money that this generates towards the services that residents want. Services like better recreational offerings, services like better roads, services like better policing, services like an enhanced downtown. This property is the gateway to our downtown. This property, I want to clarify, has never been owned by the city. And so when it was sold for $65,000 a decade ago, we did not sell that. That was sold by Sioux Area Hospital as controlled by the Sioux Area Hospital Board, of which we have no people representing the city's interests on that board. The only way we can impose conditions on this property is if we sell it to someone after owning it and impose those conditions on them. So we are buying it now, or if it's passed tonight, we are going to buy it and sell it with conditions that within a year or 18 months, the general hospital has to be demolished. Within a year or 18 months, the redevelopment of the Reno property has to be commenced. Within 2 to 5 years, or whatever the ultimate response to the RFP tells us, we are going to see the redevelopment of the general hospital started. So we are going to be able to do the things that everyone's demanding we do. Why don't we just make them start the construction? Why don't we just make them tear the building down? We can't, but we're going to be able to if we acquire this and turn around and RFP it and put it out for sale. This has been a source of contention in our community in terms of the state of disrepair it's been left in. We have tightened up our property standards bylaw 3 to 4 times in the 10 years I've been on council. Every time with this property in mind, frankly, and to say, how is it that they are getting around our property standards bylaw? And the reality is, every time we've tightened it up, the ownership has only met the bare minimum of the new property standards bylaw. And that is all that I believe this property owner is ever going to do. There is never going to be a redevelopment unless we are the impetus for change on this property. And we have a growing community, the first time since 1970 that our population, 79, sorry, that our population has grown. We have housing need in our community between now and 2036, when our population is expected to grow by 8,000 people. And we need properties like this to densify our community so that we are not expanding on the outskirts and creating urban sprawl and creating a hollowed out downtown. We need densification in the core of our community. And so I strongly support this, and I trust all of council will. I trust there is also a number of questions that councillors have. And so with my comments completed, I've got Councillor Vezoallen who had questions. And I'll take everybody's hand here. Councillor Vezoallen, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, Mayor, to Ms. Shell. Ms. Shell, so if we were to do nothing tonight, not purchase the property, potentially it would be not until 2027 that we could get it via tax sale. And in that time frame, when could the owner come the day before and pay the tax bill in full and then have fully control of the property still?
To Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezoallen, I think the key here is that the taxes have to be outstanding. So to be eligible to register in 2026, there would have to be 2 years arrears. And as you stated, the owner can come in December 31st of 2025, pay 1 year in taxes, and it adds another year. There's no guarantee that it is ever going to go to tax sale. It has not been registered in the previous history at all. There's no guarantee that it will continue down that road. So it's not something that we should be banking on, that we would be able to take the property through a tax sale.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Shell. My next question is for Mr. Ver. Mr. Ver, in terms of demolition of the old general site, in your knowledge, have we looked at costs prior? And if so, have those costs for demolition increased, say, from 2 to 3 years ago to now?
To Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezoallen, yes, we have seen cost increases. We went out in the most recent months to get updated costs, and we'd be looking at probably about $4.7 million to demolish the site and remove the foundations, and that has increased over previous estimates.
And what were the previous estimates?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezoallen, I believe the first time we were at 2 million, sorry, Larry said 2 million, and then it went up to 3, and now we're at 4.7.
4.7. So, Mr. Ver, in this RFP, just to be clear, of the purchase of the general hospital site, it would be a purchase and the new owner would be responsible for the entirety of the demolition, cleanup, environmental assessment, all of that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezoallen, correct. That is our intention.
I do support the purchase of this property. I agree that we can't gamble on whether or not this is going to go for tax sale or not go for tax sale. It is a pristine part of our community, and I fully support this, knowing that with us in control, we can determine who and what and how these properties are developed. So thank you very much for the work on this, and I support it.
Thank you, Councillor Vezoallen. Councillor Bruni?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question to Mr. Ver and maybe also Mr. Girardi. How did the 4.75 million come to that number?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, we reached out to the owner of the property, certainly interested to see the redevelopment of that land. That led into discussions with the city looking to acquire the property and negotiations in terms of the costs. So I can say we started with a much higher number in our negotiations, probably over $10 million, and we ended with 4.75 million. And we feel that given the analysis and the return on the investment, we feel we have a price that we can recommend to council and an opportunity for the community to move forward on the site.
So the 4.75 million, where will this money come from? And it's more for the viewers to totally understand.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, the money is recommended come from the contingency reserve. We had a surplus in 2023 that has been set aside, and sufficient funds exist in that contingency reserve in order to purchase the property.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, how long has this site been vacant? When did the hospital move to Great Northern Road? So when was this building vacant?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, I'm just pulling up in my report here. The property was sold to TVM Group in 2013. So it's been over 11 years when the property was sold. And I believe it was some time after the hospital moved, so it'd be longer than that, 11 years, right?
2010, maybe, approximately. So right now we're looking at 2010 to 2024, 14 years that this site has been vacant. And, okay, thank you. Now you believe the other two properties can generate approximately $2.5 million for selling purposes?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, correct. Yes, we've looked at the market. We had some assessments done, and we believe that's a fair price for these properties. Obviously, as people have referenced, it is a prime waterfront property. There is cleanup on the site for sure, but it is a prime piece of waterfront property that has significant value.
Now, would this benefit the hub trail also going around
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, the city retains the land where the hub trail exists now, but certainly from an aesthetic standpoint, from a standpoint of animating that space and getting more activation there, this will be a huge improvement to the land to see that building come down and see new development on that property.
And I think it's my last question. The General Hospital and the Reno site, right now, MPAC has it at 7.1, or it was at 7.1 million property value, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, the building values that MPAC has, they have the former General Hospital at 199,000 and the old Reno building at 609,000. With that said, the current owner was looking to sell the Reno building most recently for 3.6 million by itself. And there was a value stated in a funding application for the former General Hospital at one point with a value of 3.5 million.
Okay, thank you very much. I just have a couple comments, Mayor, or you want me to wait? Till...
No, you can do them. I looked it up while you were asking additional questions. The old hospital was moved to the new hospital on March 6, 2011, and then the old hospitals were listed in July of 2011. So they've been vacant since March 2011, listed and kind of generally available to be redeveloped since July of 2011. So 13 years.
13 years vacant, yeah.
Go ahead with your comments, Councillor Bruni.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Personally, I'm totally supportive of this. I believe the cost, the 4.75, it is a bit much, but this property has been vacant for 13 years. And if this council does not move forward in purchasing this property, you're going to see another 13 years that property will be vacant, it'll be vandalized, and it will be an eyesore. And the actual cost will be approximately 2.25 million coming out of our reserves. We will replenish our reserves with so we will be using 2.25 million. I don't want to say this is a no-brainer, but to move this forward, this prime piece of property, and I'm pretty sure we have investors or developers that would want to purchase this property. I think I think we're confident there has to be somebody here in town or out of town. But the thing that I really like is the city will have the power. The city will have the authority that, as Mayor Shoemaker has stated, if the hospital has to be demolished, there's a time frame. If the empty piece of property has to be built on, there's a time frame. It's not like someone's going to buy it and just leave it as is. There will be action. And I think that's important because the city owns it. And so I'll totally support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bruni. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a few questions, but first I want to say thank you, Mayor, for clarifying which group, which organization originally sold this. I think that's important for the community to know. And I emphasize that. Thank you. And I'm also glad in the RFP to see proponents must be in good standing with the city. So whoever purchases must be in good standing. And I think, and I want to say thank you for putting that in the RFP. Few questions. We as a council believe in supporting local businesses and local developers. In the RFP, is there an opportunity, will there be opportunity to give more points to local developers when we're assessing the proposal versus out-of-town developers?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, we don't have any local provisions within our procurement process. It's open for all to bid. I would say that certainly within the RFP and the way we'll look at developments is make sure that we have a proponent, who has a strong track record in development. And so we'll look at the company and what they've been able to accomplish elsewhere, what they've been able to build in order to select that proponent.
Okay, thank you. I noticed that there will be a committee, a selection committee. Who will be on the committee? Will a councillor or more than one councillor be included as part of the selection committee?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, what we contemplated is we would have a staff committee that would review the applications and then we'll bring forward a recommendation to council, typical to our other procurements.
Okay, thank you. Few more other questions. We as a community have talked about more grocery stores, especially in the downtown area. If I read this correctly, it's right now zoned as commercial and potential residential. In the RFP, is there an opportunity to encourage future developers to include a grocery store of some sort?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, what we hope to do was leave it open to developers to come through with their proposal. So that could include commercial, it could just include residential. I know there are other efforts in the community looking at a grocery store in the downtown area, so I don't know that we'd want to force this solution on a developer, but certainly that's something that a proponent could bring forward. But we would leave it open to them to bring forward any proposal with that commercial or residential development.
Okay. Many people in the downtown area are concerned about the methadone clinics. I had a question from a constituent saying, if it's commercial, does that mean potentially a person that buys this property could put a business in there that may not be acceptable?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, we, within that zoning, permitted use for commercial businesses, the methadone clinics fall into that permitted use within our commercial zoning. So we don't have the ability to specify or deny such an operation within a zone that's zoned commercially in this regard. Other communities have tried that, and it did go to Human Rights Tribunal. It was related to exclusionary zoning, and it's not something that municipalities are able to do.
Okay, thank you. Since our local media partners have published that we'll be talking about this tonight, have you received any phone calls, emails from local developers asking more questions? And have they shown some interest and potential and doing the RFP.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, in the lead up to bringing the recommendation to council, we had conversations with a number of developers to gauge the interest in the community. As indicated in the report, we're confident there is interest in this parcel of land. And, you know, we have the draft RFP included in this report. Once the property closes and we can declare it surplus, we'll launch the RFP right away. And I feel that, you know, there's good awareness of this property, certainly in the development community, and people have expressed interest in it.
Okay. So I agree. I feel like once this happens, we will have no troubles in finding some great developers that want to purchase this. Just a few more questions. In your RFP, how are you going to ensure that they are committed to developing the land by a certain deadline and not hold on to it like we've experienced already?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, we have the ability to set timelines within the RFP. So we were suggesting 5 years to see the building permits filed on a development. With that said, we've also indicated to proponents that the earlier that they indicate they are going to move ahead, the more favorable their application would be looked at. So those with a plan that is going to be swift to demolish the building and to develop something new will receive extra points in the process.
Okay. So if it's a 5-year hypothetically deadline and it goes into 6 years, what does that mean? Or can they ask for an extension?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, you know, what we envisioned is that the city would have the ability to take back the land should a developer not follow through on their commitments in moving forward on their development.
Okay. Just 2 questions. We have done a great job so far on our waterfront. And as you know, we've had many open houses to look at new ideas on how to improve our waterfront. It'd be a shame if the developers did not basically take our strategy in consideration developing. So therefore, in your RFP, should there be a statement included that the developer complements our waterfront strategy, which includes public parks, kayak launches, best environmental practices, such as green filtering and so forth? Is there opportunity to put in a statement to ensure that it complements what we're trying to achieve along our entire waterfront?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, yes, I think that's a good suggestion, and certainly we can build that into the RFP to look for components to have considered and positively contribute to the waterfront development.
Okay, and I'm glad to hear that, of course, the hub trail is owned by us and that the hub trail will stay intact along the frontage. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And my last question is, you stated in your report that the city cannot, and I emphasize cannot, be aware of all environmental issues. But I know that you've done your homework. I know that you've talked with former facilities managers, plus you looked at previous reports. How old was the previous report that you looked at, approximately?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, we did access reports that were probably in the vintage of when the hospital sold the facility or just prior to them selling the facility. So in that 2011, or years before timeframe.
Okay. So that brings me to, and it's not really going to be our issue, but it will be. Has the province changing the rules that may create more issues for us or the developer, that for us especially to sell that? If we're not sure if there's any other environmental issues, to your knowledge, has the province come out within last year, or is there anything in the pipeline that we should be aware of that may impact this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, I don't think there's anything we're aware of in relation to this particular site that would be a barrier that's been a recent change by the province or their regulations.
Okay. Thank you for all your hard work, the entire team. This is actually going to be a victory. And I'm under the impression that the price has been set and he's not going to walk away from this and selling it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, correct. We do have a signed agreement, and with council approval, we'll execute our side and the deal will move forward.
Okay, and we can't let it go to tax because 2027 will be a brand new council and who knows what will happen. So thank you again, all of you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Dufour.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just have a quick question about the RFP. There was a draft RFP that was attached to the report, and I just had a question. Under section 1.6, proposal evaluation, the second point is proposed development plan, and at the end it says one of the metrics will be any additional value-added components. I was just wondering, is there an opportunity here through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ver to specifically delineate affordable housing and the metrics by which the city deems something affordable? And are we, so that, I guess that's my first question. And then my second question is, can we also give an indication to developers that because this is an RFP, we would welcome them to submit basically grades of affordable units and purchase prices? So for instance, if a developer was looking at this RFP, instead of them playing a guessing game with how much affordable units council would want, let them say, okay, well, market price, I will pay you this much for the property. And if you want 10% affordable, I will pay this much for the property, right? And then kind of what I'm trying to do here is kind of create a wide opening for the proposals to come in through to hopefully give staff and council as many options as they can get at weighing and looking at proposals. So for instance, if we told developers that, you know, affordable home ownership in Sault Ste. Marie for a, you know, a 1 or a 2 bedroom unit could be considered, you know, I don't have the numbers in front of me from our task force, but somewhere around $300,000. If you could price 10% of your units here, what would your price be versus full market? I see some value there. I think that, you know, because we're using public money, we are taking public risk to buy the land. I think having that delineated as an additional value-added component that council would like to be able to consider, I think would be good. And I think there would be a lot of value in taking some of the guesswork out for developers, you know, so that they wouldn't feel like their proposal was less competitive because it included affordable components, right? So just a couple suggestions as you guys, I know this is just draft. As you move to final, those would be some things that kind of occurred to me that would have some value.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dufour. I think that's something, it's a good suggestion, certainly related to the desire for affordable units. That's something we can work into the RFP. We'll have to give some thought to the details of that, you know, potential sliding scale. I'm just thinking of how we rank, you know, one application versus another and being able to have a firm price or a firm commitment from a developer. So leave that to us to consider. And certainly the idea of encouraging affordable housing is something we can include in the RFP as a desire of council.
Yeah, I think, and in that case, if all developers are quoting, for lack of a better word, the same percentage of affordable units, then I think you are going to be able to get as close as you can to an apples to apples comparison of price and percentages. So yeah, good luck. I'm really excited to see what comes back. Happy to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Dufour. Councillor Spina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I kind of figured, most of my questions have been asked and answered, so I appreciate that. A couple of things, probably either to CEO Ver, perhaps even Ms. Shell or Ms. Fields. Can you help understand? There's been a lot of questions about the assessed value of this property. Can we talk about the difference between assessed value versus market value?
You, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Spina. The assessment on these properties is reflected as the best possible use at this time in the condition that they're at. It does not necessarily mean and translate into a market value. There's all kinds of things that go into an assessment of the property. And as has been stated, some of this is assessed at commercial, so it will have an impact. So the value that's there is as is, and it would probably stay at that value until such time that it has been developed.
Thank you. So basically, we rarely see even houses in our communities sell for the assessed value versus the market value. So, I've often said, when you're looking for real estate, you want to have an assessed value that's basically as low as you can so you pay less taxes, but you want the market value to be high. So the assessed value on this property might be low, but the market value is in fact quite high. Is that correct?
Just to clarify a bit, when you talk about residential, the assessment roll has not been updated since 2016. So the values that you see are old values. They're not current values. We're still waiting for an updated assessment. We have no word on that at this point. So that's another factor that will impact the low values that you're seeing right now.
Right. So people are understandably concerned if they see the low assessed value, but it does not necessarily translate into what the fair market value is, especially given the circumstances you've just described, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. And perhaps through you, Mr. Mayor, believe to Mr. Vare. Generally speaking, and I know it's really hard to put a number on this. I'm not going to ask you to put a number on this. Are we putting resources into this every single day in terms of enforcement, litigation, things like that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Spina, we did do an assessment since the new owners have been there, and we're in the order of about $85,000 on external legal fees, 445 hours of legal department's time. Building division estimates about 31,000 that has been spent on these properties. So it is a significant amount. We're probably in the order of about $25,000 a year that's being spent.
And that's for the 13 years, roughly. Okay, so we're spending money every year anyway right now, and really and truly that's offsetting whatever we're generating from tax revenue from this building right now.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Spina, I was going to say the same thing. Our tax assessment is about $24,000 on this property. We're spending about that.
Right. So then that's another important question I did want to ask you. So the current tax assessment is about that 24,000. If we're looking to the future in a completed project on this site, do you roughly have an idea what the tax revenue would be per year? It's not going to be 24,000. That's for sure, I would imagine.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Spina, you're correct. We would be looking at over the 20 years, we'd be looking at $5 to $15.3 million on the high density scenario with 30% affordable units. So there's significant payback for the city to see this site developed and put into use.
Right. So if 14 or 13 years ago, the council of the day had made a decision to purchase this property and do a project that we're talking about today, we'd be having a conversation about how much revenue that project had generated for the citizens of Sault Ste. Marie.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Spina, I think that is correct. I think there would have been development on that site. One thing I will mention though is the changes in the market dynamic make now a great opportunity. Our population has grown by over 3,000. We have developer interest in that property now. There's a desire for new housing. So all these things align to make now a good time to move forward on this property.
And I have one last question before just a few comments. As a result of this purchase, given you've described a great scenario where the funds will come from, thanks to Councillor Bruni for that, will this result in any kind of a tax increase for the citizens of Sault Ste. Marie, or is this a zero tax increase at this time?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Spina, we don't anticipate any impact to the levy from this purchase as the funds are coming from the contingency reserve. We will be returning funds through the sale. And also we anticipate increased tax revenue in the future on this.
Wonderful. Just a couple of comments that I will make. A lot of the questions, comments, concerns I got from individuals was, things that we've already talked about here today. Why doesn't the city just take the land? Why don't we just take it on a tax sale? And for all of the reasons that have come up, we found out why those are not possible. I know that we would all love to get land like this for free. The bottom line is we know we can't. There has to be an investment from our side to obtain this land, get it into the control that we have so that, as was described today, we can develop it in a way that is responsible and in a timely fashion. The other issue I want to make sure we talk about today is the fact that not that long ago, we all sat at this council table and we made a promise to the citizens of this community to deal with this property within this council's term. We all made that promise sitting right here in this room. And I'm very proud of the fact that we're sitting here today getting the reports from staff that are telling us that, they heard what council's direction was, they took the necessary steps and brought a very reasonable and very responsible plan back to us that will not cost the taxpayers money and in fact will generate revenue for taxpayers for the years to come, densify our population in a great way, and create housing within our community. I really think that this is a responsible and important action that this council will take, because in 15 years, when a council is sitting here, they're going to look back to what we did today and say, that council of the day set us up for success. And I'm really happy to be a part of that and happy to support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spina. Councillor Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Surprisingly, most of my questions have been asked. I do want one thing that I'd like to just clarify for this, and through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ver. So building on what Councillor Hollingsworth had said, will we, in your mind, and what you know about the property, will we be stuck with this property like we were with the Gateway for all those years? You know, decades, no one interested, or people interested but couldn't do anything, handcuffed by environmental issues. Do you foresee that happening with this property?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Scott, we don't anticipate that scenario. As mentioned, we've reached out to the market to see if there's interest in the property. We've confirmed there is current interest in the property to move forward and see it develop. And we'll move quickly to have an RFP and turn that property over into the private sector's hands.
Great. That's relieving to hear. So that being said, most of my questions were asked. I'm just going to leave this with a quick comment, and that's it's another situation this council's stuck with, and I hate to say stuck with, but external factors have left us with a situation where we are going to have to spend a little more than we want, but in the grand scheme of things, we're spending it to save it and potentially earn more, I suppose, similar to the situation with the YMCA. So through no fault of our own as a city, we're being put into a situation where we basically have to, you know, foot the bill to move forward. And these are the tough decisions that we have to face. And these are the tough decisions that we don't want to leave future councils with. So I think we need to, if we move forward with this, take a look at any potential situations in the future where we, you know, could guess that this may occur again, and do everything we can to avoid those. We've had two in pretty short succession. They're not the most popular things, but we understand that it's the right thing. And this is one of those situations where I hate the price, but I understand where that gets us. So that being said, a lot of the clarification tonight helped me make this decision that I would support this. I know it's not necessarily the most popular idea, but I do think that when somebody sees a final development there and we see the benefits of the tax money that we'll be generating, I think we'll know that it'll be worthwhile at that point. So thank you.
Any other, Councillor Caputo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I just have a comment. I think that from what I saw online, the sentiment from constituents has been mostly positive, which is not what I was expecting. And so I think it's telling that people do want to see something done with this property in a timely fashion. But one of the things that I was seeing a lot of was, why is the city getting into the real estate game? But then at the same time, I was seeing those same commenters ask, why didn't they buy it at 65K? So I think it's important to stress that you cannot have it both ways. And looking back, obviously hindsight is always 2020, but I think from a city position, we would have thought that in 2010, this property was going to go to great use from a great developer, and we were going to see, you know, something amazing happen. And at that point, it was not really the business of the city. I think it's important for constituents to recognize that this has grown into becoming the business of the city. And I think, as Councillor Spina stated, we will see this become prosperous and something really wonderful for the community. I'm in favor, and I hope that we can see this dealt with as soon as possible. Thank you.
Councillor Kinnick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have some comments. So I wanted to start by saying that, yes, I also got sticker shock at the initial reports for the or 4.75 million. It is a large amount, but the report is very thorough and it presents a great case. The fact is the city can afford to make this investment. And yes, it is an investment because we are going to be increasing the taxes we are collecting from these properties and not have an operating cost or a maintenance cost for them. This is a generational investment in our prime waterfront. It's a chance to add to our skyline and to densify our downtown. Most people, for perspective, have a 20 or 30-year mortgage on their homes. With conservative estimates, this will be paid off in 10 years for the city. This is a good deal for the neighborhood, a good deal for Queen Street, and a good deal for the city. And I will be supporting it today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kinnick. Other councillors with questions or comments on this matter? Okay, seeing none, sir. Did you have a question on the hospital report? Okay, that's, sir. Sir, that's not the matter we're dealing with at the moment, unfortunately. So if you. Sir, that's not the matter before council at the moment. That's not the matter before council. Thank you. Sir. That's not the matter we're dealing with. Thank you. Madam Clerk, we've got three bylaws to, three bylaws to vote on with respect to the hospital property.
Bylaw resolved that bylaw.
Before you get to that, sorry, I just, from the comments that that came from council and the questions that came from council, I have expressed to Mr. Fair, hopefully it will be the case that upon the closing of this deal and the city taking ownership, we will be able to, even if we have to call a special meeting, declare it surplus in the immediate aftermath so that we can get that RFP out to the community right away. So are we able to do that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, or to you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we are able to do that.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Resolved that bylaw 2024-142 being a bylaw with respect to document registration agreement and delegated authority be passed in open council this first day of October 2024.
All in favor? That carries unanimously.
And a motion by councillors Bruni and Caputo resolved that bylaw 2024-142 being a bylaw to authorize the acquisition of property located at Civic 941 Queen Street East, 941 Queen Street East Waterlot, and 995 Queen Street East be passed in open council this first day of October 2020.
All in favor? That carries unanimously.
And a motion by councillors Bruni and Caputo resolved that bylaw 2024-143 being a bylaw to authorize the acquisition of property located at Civic 10 Lucy Terrace be passed in open council this first day of October 2024.
All in favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk.
Will take us to agenda item 9.1. It's a motion by councillors Scott and Gardy, whereas City Council recognizes the importance of efficient traffic management and safety at all intersections within the city. And whereas there have been ongoing discussions regarding the necessity and effectiveness of the traffic lights located at the intersection of Wallace Terrace and Cooley Avenue. And whereas safety concerns have been raised by local residents and businesses about the removal of the traffic lights at this intersection. Now therefore be it resolved that council directs the appropriate city departments to temporarily cover the traffic lights at the intersection of Wallace Terrace and Gooley Avenue for a trial period, of which the length is determined by similar trials, monitor and assess traffic flow, pedestrian safety, and overall intersection performance during the trial period, gather feedback from local residents, businesses, and other stakeholders regarding their experiences during the trial period, prepare a comprehensive report on the findings of the trial, including recommendations on whether the traffic lights should be permanently removed or reinstated, present the report to the City Council at the conclusion of the trial period for a final decision. Further, be it resolved that appropriate measures such as signage or temporary stop signs be implemented during the trial period to ensure the safety of all road users.
Sir, please, you're disrupting the council meeting. We will have to have you removed if you do not cease interrupting us. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion came up through countless amounts of feedback I'd received from the folks in and around this intersection, the people in Bayview and the Douglas Avenue and all that whole area, basically. They were rather disappointed that council had voted to remove those lights as part of the traffic diet as well, and are rightly concerned about safety. As we saw, and it was brought up many times to me, the intersection of Albert and Elgin saw a lot of increased traffic incidents after those lights were bagged. And basically what I was hoping for was, I think the happy medium here would be do a trial. If it turns out that it's, seamless and painless, and in fact, the lights being removed don't cause issue, then that puts to rest some of the concerns that people have in the area. Or if we do see that there are issues with safety or crossing of children and families going to the new splash pad, things like that, then we would just keep the lights. I would hate to see on a road that we've seen 2 tragedies last year that we remove a feature that's intended for safety of pedestrians. I know that in Bayview, having grown up there, walking is super common. You walk to Millie's, walk to the pizza place, walk over to, Manzo Pool. Everybody does that throughout the whole neighborhood. And without these lights, there's no safe way to cross into or out of Bayview. And so I do appreciate the concerns that the residents have and that they've reached out to both Councillor Gardy and myself about. And so I'm just hoping that we could do a trial just to prove, if it's the right decision, we'll know. And if it's not the right decision, we'll know. And it's way cheaper to throw a bag on it for 3 months than it is to remove it and have an incident. And as you can see from the other motions on the agenda, traffic and safety are paramount to this council. So that's everything I had to say about that. So hopefully we can just do a trial and let the people know in Bayview that they are being heard for sure. Thank you.
Councillor Gardy.
Yeah, so just to echo Councillor Scott's comments to a degree, there aren't too many issues of any sort that I've dealt with in the last 6 years that I've gotten more feedback from our constituents. And I think it's important that, we're doing everything that we can to slow down traffic in the community. There's been a road diet on Wallace Terrace, which I think may continue, but regardless of the diet and the introduction of the bike lanes on Wallace Terrace, that's a pretty long stretch without any traffic lights. So and we get concerns about speeding on Wallace Terrace all the time. Hopefully the road diet will help with that. But I think Councillor Scott raises a really good point when it comes to Bayview. to a certain degree, because of the busyness of Wallace Terrace, and I liken it to Carmen's Way, Wallace Terrace is often isolated from the rest of the community. Much like we hear about after Carmen's Way being built, James Street and the surrounding neighborhood being isolated from the rest of the community. A lot of residents of that area felt that they were disconnected by way of a safe crossing and a busy street. So I'm happy to support this on behalf of the residents, especially in Bayview, who have been quite vocal with Councillor Scott and I. I am hopeful that for this trial period, we'll get the support of a majority of council for this trial period and be able to better inform them and alleviate any concerns or, confirm some of the concerns that they brought forward. So thanks, Councillor Scott, and thanks for taking the time to listen.
Thank you, Councillor. Council, I see this the same way I see the issue that we dealt with just before the hospital property on the traffic signals, that where lights aren't warranted, they ought to be removed because we add them when they become warranted. And there were traffic studies in 2015 and in 2022 that confirmed that these traffic signals were not warranted. In 2015, council approved the removal of them, and then a reconsideration was brought undoing that decision. And in 2022, we made that decision. 2023, actually, we made that decision. And I don't believe we should undo that decision. There is a new pedestrian crosswalk that is being installed. I noticed the curb lanes are being pulled in on Goulet Avenue, which should help notify drivers that something's different from what it used to be. And if we struggle to remove a single light every time and debate it, we will, like I said, be over signalized as we were with all the signals that I named earlier: Huron and Cathcart, Huron and Wellington, Albert and Andrew, Albert and Gore Simpson and Wellington, John and Bloor. We need to remove signals when they become unwarranted because we add them when they become warranted. So I do not support this motion, and I hope that council will support me in voting it down. And with that, a vote on the matter. All in favor of the motion? All opposed? They voted. I think it passed.
Councillor Bezo-Allen. Are you voting in favor or opposed? I can favor. So that passes 8-3 in favor of Councillors Hollingsworth, Dufour, Bezo-Allen, Rooney, Kinnick, Hardy, and Scott, and against Mayor Shoemaker, Councillor Spina, and Councillor Zagordo.
Thank you, council. Brings us to
Agenda item 9.2 is a motion by Councillors Caputo and Zagordo, whereas community safety zones are defined as segments of roadways where public safety is of special concern and may include roadways near parks, playgrounds, daycare centers, recreation areas, hospitals, senior centers, residences, and areas with a large concentration of pedestrian activity. And whereas Sioux College enrollment has increased significantly in the last 10 years, increasing population and foot traffic in the area, and whereas a number of elementary schools have amalgamated, effectively creating super schools and or schools with higher enrollment in the area, and whereas speeding has been identified as a major issue around the city, this is documented to be well over the posted 40 kilometers per hour in many school zones, including St. Paul School, posting 59.5 kilometer as 85th percentile speed, and Boreal French Immersion posting 64.94 kilometer as 85th percentile speed. And whereas this area has connections to the Hub Trail, new development, buildings housing seniors and citizens with disabilities, as well as many families. Now therefore be it resolved that staff report back to council regarding designating Northern Avenue from Sackville Road to Pine Street a community safety zone, and regarding designating Pine Street from Northern Avenue to McNabb Street a community safety zone.
Councillor Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, council, for considering this. This is something that I am passionate about taking on. When I was elected, it was on the basis that I was going to try and make things safer for children, elderly people, folks with disabilities, easier for people to cross roads, and easier to participate in active transportation. It has become clear to me, as I stated earlier in the meeting, that speeding is a huge issue in Sault Ste. Marie. Unsafe driving is a huge issue in Sault Ste. Marie. And this seems to be the easiest way to try to curb bad behavior. Designating a community safety zone would effectively double fines in the areas. I'm hoping to see support from police services if this passes, and getting some more enforcement, which I think is absolutely necessary. But signage continues to be very confusing in school zones across the city. And I'm hoping that with moving this forward, we can get some really nice, clear signage and make it a little easier for folks to adhere to the traffic laws moving forward. This is a zone where there are a lot of, these two zones where there's a lot of new development and a lot of kids and elderly folks with disabilities, as I mentioned. So I hope that we will consider it in coming forward as a community safety zone. Thank you.
Sorry, the motion's up. Gordo.
I'd just like to add that for the reasons mentioned in the in the proposal and the comments made by Councillor Caputo, I'm happy to support and second this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. Councillor Bruni and I sit on the traffic speed task force. And the team that is at that table includes the police and our staff. They have been working extremely hard at developing community safe zones. They have been working very hard at reducing speeders in this community. So my question is, it used to be to my buddy, but through you, Mayor, to I guess to Mr. Rimmel?
Probably still answer the question.
Okay. Can someone please update us on where we stand in identifying community safe zones for the whole entire city? And should we as like counselors start to identify these areas ourselves, or should we continue to wait until the task force designates them?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth. Community safety zone policy basically outlines ways that the community could request certain locations in town be designated community safety zones. So with that being said, yeah, the staff in engineering and the task force are open to councillors and members of the public bringing other locations forward if they see fit, for sure. We'll run it through the policy and create that prioritization list and present to council.
Okay. And can you just update us on where we stand on other community safety zones? How many exist at this time?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, these are the first two locations requested so far. So we'll use the policy and then come back to council with a recommendation on that.
Okay, so these are the first two that are requested. However, I was under the impression staff will be coming to council with their own suggestions or recommendations. Is that correct?
That's right. Depending on the implementation of automated speed enforcement, there might be opportunities to expand community safety zones just to make the implementation there feasible.
Okay, and I believe that the committee is looking at old age or retirement homes as one of the criteria. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, that's correct. And then, the task force could also come forward with recommendations as well for additional community safety zones too, similar to the public and council.
Okay, thank you for all those clarifying points. Thank you.
So the vote is open. Sorry.
Question, yes.
just a comment. The accessibility committee, and I know Mr. Tanatso and some of our members were at the corner of Northern Avenue and Great Northern Road with Cara Community. And they've been identifying that. So I just want to say thanks for bringing this forward. And in terms of staff, Diane from Accessibility probably has some meaningful information for you in terms of what they discovered when they did that sort of field trip with Mr. Tanatso on doing the crossing.
Thank you. Any other comments? No, and we're ready for a vote. Oh, I'm sorry, Stefan. Councillor Kinnick, go ahead.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Zagordo. Just a question, I guess, to Mr. Perry. Just to upon your comments there about how it's assessed and everything, my concern is with this area, especially Northern Avenue from Sackville to Great Northern Road, where the street is mostly like resident or is not residential, it's mostly commercial. If we make this a community safety zone, I'm worried that we're going to push traffic onto Reed Street and to Strand Avenue, where the speed limit is going to be left at 50 kilometers an hour. How would that be addressed? Or how can we factor that in to your equation there?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Kinnick, Reed Street is perpendicular to Northern Avenue, so to avoid that location, I think would be fairly unlikely. But we would perform the assessment for that particular location as outlined by Councillor Caputo's recommendation and compare it against the criteria that are outlined in the policy.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I think we're on that. Those in favor of the motion? Those against? Sorry. Councillor Kinnick. We just need his vote.
And Councillor Gardy. In favor.
In favor.
So that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
And agenda item 9.3, Baseline and Carpon Beach Road intersection, a motion by Councillor Scott and Gardy. Whereas the intersection of Baseline and Carpon Beach Road is located in close proximity to RMore Public School, where a significant number of children and families regularly travel to and from the area. And whereas the safety of students, staff, and residents is of paramount importance to this council, and whereas over the past 3 years, there have been 2 major traffic incidents at this intersection, both of which resulted in direct damage to the playground where RMore students play, and where we have been incredibly fortunate that no injuries have occurred. And whereas increased traffic volumes and speeding vehicles at this intersection present an ongoing and unacceptable risk to the safety of pedestrians, particularly school children. Now, therefore, be it resolved that council requests staff to report back regarding the installation of a 4-way stop at the intersection of Baseline and Carpon Beach Road. And further, be it resolved that staff be requested to explore additional traffic calming measures and enhanced signage to ensure the safety of children and all pedestrians in the vicinity of RMore Public School.
Councillor Scott, you're keeping the traffic department busy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so as the motion outlines, for those of us unfamiliar, there's an intersection at Carpon Beach Road and Baseline, and on the northeast corner of the intersection is RMore School. And the way that it's laid out there's also a Childcare Algoma daycare there, and wrapped around the entire south section of the school is a little fenced in area for children to play. And Councillor Gardy and I have had the unfortunate responsibility to have gone there a few times to discuss safety after 2 major traffic incidences have happened in the last 3 years. The first one we met with the Child Care Algoma staff and city staff, and Algoma District School Board, to which Algoma District School Board immediately put up some protection on their portion of the property. We were very fortunate that nothing happened at that time. And then most recently, I think it was 2 Saturdays ago, a car ran into a planter box that was strategically placed to prevent it from going any further. And if it would have been a truck, it would have definitely hit directly the fence, where children would have been right on the other side any day of the week aside from the weekend. We've been incredibly fortunate that nothing has occurred here. The staff and residents in the area have expressed to Councillor Gardy and I that the traffic bollards are not slowing people down. I know we have data stating the opposite, but it's still 20 kilometers higher than it should be because it's a school zone. So that's really not slowing people down. What we would like to see is a study, or not a study, rather a report, to show us, what it would look like to have a 4-way stop there. If you've traveled on Baseline, it's a nice, straight, well-paved, very tempting piece of road where you may think that you're, a drag racer because you have all that open road and you're trying to get home, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, it's a school zone as well, and people aren't slowing down. So the introduction of a 4-way is really the only other thing I can think of at this point that would help. It's what the residents are asking for. It's what Child Care Algoma is asking for. I really don't see the inconvenience of having to stop there if it means it's slowing people down. We've had 2 close calls, and I really wouldn't want to see any more. So anything we can do to help is basically why this motion came forward. So hopefully we can support the report back and then go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Gardy?
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of feedback from people who live in the vicinity over the course of the last bit, and I think they were appreciative of our initial efforts, or that of the city, to put up the bollards. Since they've been up, I've been going out there. I have to slow down because I'm not that great of a driver, but there are a lot of people who don't slow down much at all. From my few times spending 10, 15 minutes in the parking lot out at the school. It's a long stretch of nice asphalt, and people open it up there all the time. And I don't know what we would do as a group of municipal leaders if there was a tragedy there because people were going too fast, and well, quite frankly, Child Care Algoma, I think ADSB would concur with Child Care Algoma, and Councillor Scott and I have kind of told you guys that this is what's going on. So I'm hoping at the very least that you'll be able to support Councillor Scott's motion to see what we can do in this regard, and any other ideas, I guess, essentially. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Gardy. Can we have a vote on that matter? All in favor? That carries.
That carries unanimous. And under agenda item 12, I have a motion by Councillors Bruni and Caputo, resolved that all bylaws under item 12 of the agenda under date October 1, 2024 be approved.
All in favor? That carries.
And I have a motion by Councillors Kinnick and Segordo, resolved that this council now adjourn.
All in favor? That carries with a bit of a delay on the vote there.